already here, would people mind just adding their name to their making sure that their name is up? I can see a lot of Jumu 400 and something and something. You can easily go in and change your name. I think you just hover over your picture and click top right hand button, and there are 3 dots, and rename.
Oh yeah, so rename. Yeah, okay.
Rename. Yeah, so if you can name yourself or even rename yourself, that would be great.
You can give a fake name.
Yeah, I think that works.
You won't know the difference.
Okay, so welcome everyone. Final session of the day. Hope you enjoyed your lunch, and hope you enjoyed the other presentations that you've attended. It's start of the day here in the UK, so I'm going to be catching up on the other presentations as the morning transpires. My presentation it comes as a result of some work that I've been doing for year 1, which is looking at the placement test and seeing if there's a better way for us to assess students as they arrive in week 0 and place them onto their courses. So that's a project that has pushed me to look at the different placement, the different online tests that are out there on the market, and the latest ones. I noticed that they include elements of automated scoring of writing and speech, and that it took me back. Well, I had to look into whether this was actually viable, feasible, and whether the school we could trust that kind of system for our students. But it also took me back to conferences I was going to maybe 10 years ago, and there were presenters talking about automated scoring of writing and speaking, and showing lots of statistics to show how it worked, or it was getting close to working. I didn't buy it at the time, but things have changed, and I'm open to persuasion, and so I revisited this idea, and over the last couple of weeks I've been doing reading around what the most up-to-date systems are in automated scoring of speech and writing, but I'm going to focus on speech in this presentation. So yeah, there's been a quiet revolution in machines understanding human speech. Well, it's been quiet for me. I didn't notice it. 2 years ago I was in Egypt, and there was very little technology around, but I've noticed now that there are many machines, cars, home devices that understand human speech. And I think it's been quite a revolution. Well, people don't seem to really talk about it much, but it's all around us. So here's some statistics I just grabbed quickly. Sorry, no source here, but let's call them estimations. How people are engaging with voice. So voice search, the most common use of voice-activated device is doing searches for information. Siri, Alexa, Google Assistant, Cortina. And then searching for music through a smart home speaker. Voice commands to the TV. I never realized that was possible. And then voice commands to a vehicle, which I have seen that, experienced that. And the last one is the voice skills or actions through smart home speaker, which I don't actually know what that one means. Are there any others that we could add to this list? Let's just, could anyone volunteer something nifty that they activate using their voice, command using their voice, whereas before maybe it would have been through a keyboard. Any ideas? Feel free to turn on your mic. Linda's put Dragon Dictation. Do you want to just tell us what that is, Linda?
Yeah, my dad uses this because he can't type, and so he just speaks what he wants to write, and he speaks it slowly,
Yeah.
you know, and in little chunks, and it's pretty good. It's pretty accurate. He has to clean it up later, you know, because it doesn't get everything right.
So it's a speech to text application, and it's for kind of creating a dictation.
Well, and WeChat does that too. If someone records a message for you on WeChat, you can have it switch it to text.
Changed. Yes, yeah.
And it's more or less accurate.
Yeah. And some people hate wading through voice notes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
They prefer reading them. Yeah. Okay. So dictation. So from speech to text, and then also that maybe the same application, same technology is used with WeChat. I think WhatsApp has it as well, a little application that you can add on, which changes voice notes to text. And as you said, reasonably good, but not 100%. So yeah, there is a lot. There has been a big technological advance in changing speech into text. And what I'm interested in is, I misread that, Dara, but any businesses hotlines, yes, yeah, businesses hotlines, definitely the voice controlled menu system. That was the inspiration actually for this presentation. Initially, it was when I called my UK bank, and I had to set up my new password was my voice. So my voice is my fingerprint, rather than just the kind of choosing options by voice. They also use it as your fingerprint. So yeah, technology related to speech and voice all around us. So how will this impact assessment of speaking? And that's what I'll be looking at in this presentation. So what is speech recognition technology, and how does it work? So you might just take it at face value as, oh wow, my smartphone speaker can understand me. It doesn't talk back much, but it can understand what I'm saying. Like people think about their pets. But what's actually behind it? How does it actually work? So I've got the sun in my eyes here. So, yeah, okay. So this image represents the system very simply. And then I'm going to pass you over to an expert who will explain how the speech recognition technology works in a bit more detail. So yeah, start with the voice, and then the voice is decoded into, yeah, the voice is decoded by computer, so it's analog to digital, so it's digitized, and then the digitized coding is put into some kind of pattern recognition, and that recognizes the utterance, the speech, and then hopefully that leads to an action. But as I said, to explain it in more detail, I found a very interesting interview that was held with Catherine Breslin. She was, yeah, she was on the Amazon Alexa speech recognition team with a guy called Jeff Adams. You'll see him in the video I'm about to play as well, and he led the Alexa team. So she was there kind of from the start with Alexa and worked on its development through to releasing the product, first generation, and going through the generations to it now being probably the most commonly used smart speaker. And they both work now at Cobalt Speech. So I've been starting to learn about this huge industry that I knew nothing about. And there are tech companies which do bespoke recognition, speech recognition systems. And so speech recognition has moved into loads of different areas, and voice assistance as well for organizations. So that's where she and Jeff are now working. Cobalt Speech, worth checking out their website. Here's our interviewer. So this guy runs a YouTube channel into tech gear, and he was basically interviewing Catherine and asking her the kind of questions that we might have to ask her. So I've taken a few excerpts from this video, and she explains what speech recognition technology is. And I think it's important to go into detail here because as language teachers and language specialists, I'm sure you'll be keen to know what's under the hood, as they say. In this first of 3 excerpts, well, look out for the lockdown moment. It's no one naked walking behind her, but yeah, it's there's a 20-second distraction away from her explanation of what is speech recognition technology, and I think it kind of captures the era that we're in. I'm just going to play a few seconds, and can you give me a thumbs up to let me know that the audio is fine and the volume is fine?
So we've kind of gone on to some topical situations there, which I think has been really good. But for those people listening who...
How's the audio? Raoul says good, Norm says good. Quite than you, huh? Quieter. Oh, quieter. Well, where I am, it's very quiet. I thought it was too quiet. And Raoul and Norm says it's good. So maybe Linda, if you could turn down your volume, and I'll start it from the beginning. So everyone good? Yeah. Okay. So it's about 4 minutes. So sit back and find out how speech recognition technology works.
So we've kind of gone on to some topical situations there, which I think has been really good. But for those people listening who are familiar with voice assistants and they know the term speech recognition, I know the term speech recognition, kind of think I know what it is, don't really know the details of how it works and probably what it really is. So moving the conversation on, can you just, it'd be nice to hear how you would describe what speech recognition actually is.
Yeah, sure. So speech recognition is the task of taking audio data and making a best guess or an informed guess or an informed estimate of the speech, the transcript, the words that people said. So it's audio in and text out. Now, in order to do that, there's a few things that you need to put into the models behind the scenes. So our current speech recognition systems, most of what people have deployed follow a similar kind of pattern where you break the speech recognition down into 3 different modules or 3 different components. The first of those is the lexicon. So the lexicon is a list of words, and alongside each of those words, it has a phonetic pronunciation. So that's where you learn that the word cat, maybe, is pronounced k-at in the phonetic pronunciation, and the word that is th-at. And you have a long list, and this contains where you have multiple pronunciations of a word, so the and the, or either and either. All of these are contained in the lexicon. And you typically have, for English, around about 50 different phonemes, 50 different sounds that you combine together to make the words. And this is often sort of handcrafted by expert phoneticians in this lexicon. So from the lexicon, the next thing that you need to understand is when people talk, which sounds are they making? So you have something called an acoustic model. And this is taking small bits of audio and predicting which of those phonemes people are saying at the same time. So your model will take in a small bit of sound and say, well, I think the person is saying ah, and another small bit of sound, and I think they're saying ka. And then the final piece of this is called a language model. And the language model predicts which sequences of words are more common than others. So, can you hear the kids in the background? It's the joy of.
I thought that we were going to hear man at some point. He's been screaming, just very faintly behind me. He's been screaming, he's teething, and yeah, he's been going crazy. So I think it's totally acceptable in this day and age with working from home and being on lockdown. Everyone's kids are going absolutely mental.
Yeah, I've seen all these things on Twitter about you know, how people should keep their kids off Zoom, and there was a New York Times article, and I think that's just not the way we could do things right now.
No. Did you see the one a while back with it was a guy giving a news report, and he was like literally just like in his room, he was giving a news report. It was live on like BBC or something like that, and his kid just comes walking through the door and walks us through like that.
Oh, that was brilliant. I think that was the first time we saw the reality of home working on such a large scale. Great. So let me get back to the language model.
The language model
that I was talking about. So the language model is the final bit of the speech recognition system, which is going to tell you which sequences of words are more likely. So if I say the cat sat on the, I know that the word mat is probably quite common, but also there are other things that are common, like chair, rug. All of these would be quite common, whereas the cat sat on the goodbye, it's not going to happen really. So this language model is going to tell you about the sequences of words. So we put them together. We've got an acoustic model, which tells you which sounds are being spoken. The lexicon tells you how those sounds combine into words. And then the language model tells you how those words combine into sequences of words. We put them together in a decoding algorithm, and we have a speech recognition system.
Wow. So
I like his response. Wow. Okay, so you probably noted the lockdown moment. Linda, I hope you noted that I got in a cat for you early on. Let me just recap what she went through. Quite a lot of content, but essentially, you've got 3 parts to the system. You've got the acoustic model, which identifies the phoneme spoken, the sounds, and that's based on algorithms. So it's constantly predicting what phoneme is likely to come after the one that it's just deciphered. The lexicon is it's based on a huge corpus of how language works together and how sounds work together, and it uses this as like a database to take the phonemes recognized and combine them into words. And then the language model applies the grammar to the words to form sentences. So the acoustic model takes the sound, puts it into, or recognizes what the sounds are, and then the lexicon is dealing with non-phonemic units, and it's starting to convert into words, and that's when it's using a text, and then the language model converts the words into sentences. And so that's slowly, it's turning speech into text. And the subtitles, as Linda pointed out, not 100% correct, and they're picking up on accent. And that's something that is inevitable when you're transcribing mechanically, that you will pick up on accent, especially a Geordie accent, which is what this guy has, the interviewer. Okay, let's go on to the second excerpt, which explains the acoustic model in more detail. So remember the acoustic model, this is the part which identifies the phonemes being spoken.
Wow. So how then, and this might be all part of the wizardry, but when an audio signal is fed into this system, how does it actually recognize which bits of the audio match to which, like, phoneme or lexicon? Like, how can it tell? Because all audio is just frequencies, isn't it?
Yeah.
Basically. So
yeah.
how does it actually tell what the audio is, that it's even speech in the first place? Like, is it all to do with like frequency recognition?
It's all to do with the frequencies that are in it. So if you record an audio file, you can look at it in a different view. You can look at it in a frequency view, and then you can see quite clearly the different characteristics of different phonemes. So there are some, they fall into different groups. So you have vowels, for example, like R, E, U. They have got very strong characteristics of frequency. So they have a fundamental frequency, and then different frequencies above that are active or not. So you can see the difference between the different vowels just by which frequencies are strong in it. Something like a k or a p, these are what we call plosive consonants. So they're sort of quite bursty, have very different frequency characteristics to those vowels. There are other things like sh and s, which are a little bit more like noise. So they've got a constant frequency response. So if you look at the frequencies that are in those, like white noise is kind of a s sound. And so you can see that there's different, across all the frequencies, it's relatively even in those sorts of sounds. So you can tell them apart just by looking at the different frequency components that occur in the different signals.
Okay, so basic points there is that sounds have unique frequency characteristics. They've got like a fingerprint, and they're recognizable by that. And that these are used to identify the individual sounds being made. The last part of this interview, or that we're going to hear from Kathleen, is how the system works together and how it deals with errors, errors of its own judgment, and how it covers its own back. Hopefully you'll see what I mean. She explains it much better.
Okay. So once we have an audio signal, we break that audio signal down into a frequency spectrum, and we use the frequencies that exist to map each phoneme throughout the audio signal. Is that right?
Yeah, so if you think about this in a little bit more detail, we take the audio signal, which might be, say, 5 seconds of audio. We break it down into small, typically about 25 millisecond frames. So for each frame, we're going to predict a phoneme. So we take that 25 millisecond audio, and we have actually trained a deep neural network, a machine learned model, which is going to take the frequencies in that 25 milliseconds, the frequency response, and figure out which sounds it thinks are most likely. And then you move along to the next 25 milliseconds, and again, you take the frequencies, and then you look through a neural network and see what's predicted as the sound, and keep going through that whole 5 seconds.
Wow. So that sounds like some fairly fast computing So it needs to
Yeah,
be done.
it's fairly fast computing. And these don't have to be like 100% accurate, and they actually aren't 100% accurate. But if you get the actual sound a little bit wrong, and you might say, I think this is an ah with high priority, high probability, but an ah with slightly lower. But the language model says an ah doesn't make sense in this because I've got all this other information about the words that are being spoken. They sort of can help each other a little bit as well. In the same way that, you know, when you listen to somebody and initially you think they said something and then your brain corrects it later. I think there's something similar goes on with all the information from the speech recognition system. So it can make mistakes in the language model or make mistakes in the acoustic model, and sometimes they can help to correct each other.
Okay, so that's the speech recognition system. Pretty complex, and it's advanced by leaps and bounds in the last 5 years, to the point that it's making a simultaneous transcription as someone is speaking here on YouTube, and it's training itself. It's predicting what should come next, and then it's also able to identify the likelihood that if a surprise word comes, that it's an error, and then it's able to work out what it probably was. So it's an amazing piece of kit. I've learned only superficially about it. If anyone knows anything about deep neural networks, I'd love to know more. Here's a recap. So speech recognition is a computer program that's trained to take the input of human speech, interpret it, and transcribe it into text. So, like the Dragon Dictation. It works by breaking down the audio of a speech recording into individual sounds, analyzes each sound using algorithms to find the most probable word fit. So that's a key concept there, probable word fit in that language, then transcribes these sounds into text. It deals with variability, sorry, by using machine learning. So the variability is different people have different styles of language, and different genres as well will produce different structures, more commonly different features of language. So all of this variability means that the program has to learn. It can't just mechanically work through, process the language. So it uses machine learning. So as a user continues to use the technology, the software learns that person's particular speech patterns and variances, and then adjusts accordingly. So yeah, in essence, it learns the user and learns from the user. And it uses deep learning neural networks and natural language processing. Can't imagine the fun that I had looking through academic articles which refer to deep learning neural networks. And again, if anyone's here who knows about these, I'd love to have a chat. But what I think is remarkable is that machines are now able to transcribe human speech more accurately than humans can. So pretty impressive tech, but back to the point of the presentation, how is it used in the assessment of speaking? Right, one way, and this has been used, this is one of the original uses, and actually, well, I'm not sure, but may have been a driver in the advancement of the tech, or might be just following along with the advancement of the tech. And that's pronunciation. So pronunciation doesn't require that much interpretation and kind of understanding of what someone's trying to say. It's just how they say it. And as the explanation we listened to before gave. It's about frequencies, and that can be put into these kind of, it can be digitized in this way. So speech recognition technology being used in speaking assessment, comparing a learner's pronunciation with a model. So how it was spoken by the learner and how it should have been said. So question over to you, language experts, teaching languages, learning languages. Have you used any pronunciation applications? I expect everyone's used, I hope everyone's used at least one. If you can tap it in the chat. Linda, come on. For Chinese, you must have used one. Dara, can you name the one that you've used? Duolingo, okay. Yep. Okay, so Duolingo is a well-known one. Thank you, Dara. This one here, Elsa. Dr. Zhu delivered EAP talk. Huh? Not sure what that means. WeChat for pronunciation learning. Okay, didn't know about that. So Elsa is one that I came across, which I didn't know about before I was looking into it, but this is apparently used on a huge scale, and this oh, sorry, I'm just trying to monitor the chat and present. So Dr. Zhu, who works here, developed a website called EAP Talk. Oh, interesting. Okay. Okay, so Elsa is one application. I went to the website, but they've got an app as well, which uses the technology. There are many more actually. This one is one based in China, Liu Li Shou, which some of you might be familiar with, and it picks up and uses the technology that we've just gone through. Okay, sorry, I'm going to stop looking at the chat because I can't talk and look at the chat at the same time. Okay, so the ISIP oral reading fluency is another device or way that speech recognition technology has been used. Now, this piece of kit, it's used with young learners, and it gets them to read aloud. So you've got the controlled input, which is the text. So the machine knows what to expect, and then it judges how the delivery, basically, of the transcription that it already has. So it's quite a controlled way of assessing speech. So it uses the voice recognition to measure oral reading fluency. So that's kind of speed reading rate for elementary students, and that's done both in English and Spanish. Takes into account accuracy of pronunciation, the speech rate, and then other prosodic features, intonation, for example. And they find that the oral reading fluency scores correlate strongly to reading comprehension, and also are a good predictor of success in state, that's American state tests. If you're interested, you can learn more about it here. I'll share these slides with you at the end of the presentation. As Dara mentioned, Duolingo started off as a language learning application, and it's an language learning application that allows you to learn many different languages. I'm not sure how many now, but definitely over 10. And it uses just an automated system of feeding in vocabulary and chunks of language, getting you to say them, and testing you. And if you don't know the language, it goes to the front of the queue and you're reminded about it more frequently. If you know it, it goes to the back and you're reminded about it less frequently. So it's an automated system of language learning. And they brought in this speech recognition technology to enable work on pronunciation. And an extension of their work in language learning devices is their integrated language test. I'm going to focus on this now for a bit. So their language test it's 7 item types, and together they measure test taker ability to use language skills required for literacy, writing, conversation, comprehension, listening and reading, and production. So you notice that they don't divide them into listening, reading, writing, and speaking. They have these other divisions, which I think is a good approach. And it's an adaptive test, so that means the level of difficulty changes as you work through the test. So if you do well in the first third, you get more challenging tasks in the second and final third. And their tasks are a dictation, so listen and type yourself, vocabulary tests, audio and visual, so you hear a word, you type it, you hear a word, you pick it out from a list. Visual, you have to look for the nonsense words. Elicited imitation, basically parrot fashion, repeating what you've heard. And a C test, that's where I think it's a mechanical test creation approach, whereby I think it's every third syllable, or the second syllable of every third word is removed from a text. Here we go. Linda's saying, I think it's the first half of every word. No, that would be too much. I think it's something like every fifth word, the first half or the second half, and it's just done through the text. And it was found that this was a good way to create a reading test without having to think about, without spending a lot of time working out which words to manipulate. Just do it in a mechanical way, and the test taker has to complete the words, kind of like Hangman, adding the letters. So these are all of the sort of mechanical item types in this test. And these are fed in an adaptive way. And then test takers are also asked to respond to 4 prompts for writing, so freer writing, and then 4 speaking prompts, freer speech. And the level of challenge, again, is dictated by the performance so far in the test. So the test basically has, it's 2/3 adaptive, small tasks, which are done multiple times, and over time it works out what your level is. And then more chunkier tasks, the freer production of writing and speech. So I was interested in the speech part, and I'll go on to that now. The speech part, by the way, is the dictation, and no, that's writing. The elicited imitation, and then the freer speech prompts. I'm just going to play another clip now, and this basically gives you a taste of the test in 2 minutes.
Is she reading a book? Yes, she is.
Brass. Mirror.
Skillfully.
Usequent.
Responsibility. Bonus.
Mathematical and computer models are produced, and field research is done to test the models.
Describe a situation when you have given or received praise.
So after observing the situation for a while, I proposed along the street, there is a place in which all children, regardless of their family income, can receive at least 9 years of education.
Okay, the test takes about 40. Well, it's because it changes based on your performance. So it can take up to an hour, but it can take as little as 40 minutes, depending on how quickly you do the writing tasks. But the speech parts, as I said, it's elicited imitation, basically listen, repeat, and it starts off simple, and it gets progressively more difficult. And if you're good at it, you get much longer, more complex pieces of language that you hear or read. Yeah, it's either read aloud or you hear and then repeat it. And as it gets longer, you have to, there's more kind of need to remember what you heard. But that's controlled. It's like the oral reading fluency for the young learners, where the computer knows what to expect or what you should say. And then it focuses on how you say it. Then the extended speech, describe the image, talk about an experience with a friend. That gives samples of spontaneous speech. So this is how the scoring works. It scores your speech, or it scores everything automatically using machine learning algorithms as introduced by Catherine, and natural learning language processing models. For the dictation, that's for the adaptive item types, C-test, that's either correct or not correct. The vocabulary, it's either correct or not correct. Dictation, it's either correct or not correct. So it doesn't need algorithms for that part. But the elicited imitation, it does, because it's focusing on your delivery of speech, and it's assessing that. And for the writing and speaking prompts, it definitely needs that, because it's looking at spontaneous language use. The features that are taken into account for the controlled speech, it just focuses on fluency and phonological features. For the spontaneous speech and writing, actually, it's grammatical accuracy and complexity, it's lexical range and sophistication, it's relevance to topic or prompt, and it's the length of your turn. How were the algorithms developed? Okay, this part was fun to try and get my head around. So yeah, the algorithms, so in the early days, to make the test, they had to train the algorithm to be able to differentiate between levels of performance. But it also needed to know what these different levels actually look like. What are the characteristics of a high level of spoken speech? What are the characteristics of slightly below high level, mid, low mid, and a low level? So they used almost 4,000 pilot performances, spoken and writing also about 4,000. And then they got expert human raters to score all of the performances, speech and written. And then the algorithms, they do something which I don't quite understand. It's called cross-validation, and it trains itself to recognize, to pull out the differences or the things which make the high scoring performances distinct, and it cross-validates, it checks its predictions across all of the across the different performances. Sorry, I've not explained that very well because I don't really understand it. But it trains itself on 90% of the data. That's these 4,000 speech performances and scripts, and then it tests itself on 10%. And what was found was that the human-to-human agreement on the writing scripts was 0.68, which means 68% of the time two markers will agree on what's on the score of a written script. For speech it was higher, for over three quarters of the time. Two humans will agree, two markers will agree on what's the I think is quite strong support for their algorithm working, and that's that the Duolingo test correlates with TOEFL IBT, so that's made by ETS and by IELTS. So you can see that there's reasonably strong correlation between the Duolingo test and IELTS and TOEFL IBT. Duolingo, which takes less than an hour to complete. But all of this is according to Duolingo. It's in their technical manual. It is cited to studies done, but a lot of those studies were commissioned by Duolingo. I can see we're running out of time very quickly. I've got loads more to get through, so I'm just going to have a think. Okay, now I'm going to jump to my conclusions, and then we can have a few questions before you all disappear. But yeah, you can see there's a lot more content to share, but I'll make these slides available if you want to sit back and read all of this. So in answer to the question, can AI really assess a student's speaking ability? Well, yes, for very controlled tasks, but it's still open to error at the transcription stage. As you probably noted, as we were watching the automatically transcribed YouTube video, there were errors, and that causes, well, that a speaker would be marked down for errors from the transcription system, which is not right. That's not fair. Accent can have a disproportionately strong effect. The evaluation of a transcribed text is open to the same issues as evaluation of a written text. So basically the speech recognition software is just the first part, and that's very clever, and it changes it to text. But then you've got the problem of how do you mark the language use in a text? Yes, you can look at simple features like vocabulary variation, vocabulary level, kind of level of using LexTutor, say, grammatical complexity, grammatical range. You can look at these things just as a readability measure does in Word. But there are so many other features which make up a written text. And so you have the same issues as the same difficulties as you would have in an automated scoring of a written text. Essentially, you can only measure what can be quantified, because that's what a computer can deal with. So if you can't quantify it, then it can't be scored. And then speech has some unique issues, imperfections, the unorthodox nature of spoken grammar, the fact that people are often quite lazy in their speech. They find shortcuts in their writing, they craft it a bit more. And so speech is, even when you get it into a text form that you can rely on, it's still very difficult to assess its quality. It's unpredictable. So how do human raters compare? Well, yes, they have their fallibilities. The halo effect, which is where you have someone, a test taker is very strong in one area, and that brings up the scores in the other areas, which are unrelated. So you might have very good pronunciation, and that brings up your other scores, even though your language use is no better. Fatigue, so computers don't get tired. That's a big advantage of them. Human raters, they have an inability to process information concurrently. So a computer system can take 100 measures and it can monitor them all at the same time. But the human can only focus on one or maybe two tasks or two features at the same time. And there's a resistance to training. So the computer system is highly open to training, and we're teaching them to train themselves, but some markers can be resistant to training because they have their own beliefs. But human raters are able to reach more nuanced judgments. I think that's a key word, and that's going to be the thing which often separates humans from human judgment from machine judgment, the fact that it can be nuanced. And there's the old one, but still relevant, is that human raters can comprehend what someone is saying, not just how they say it. And there are probably some comic ways of fooling the Duolingo speaking test by talking nonsense, but still getting a high score. So, in conclusion, human raters should not be cast aside, but they should be trained in how to make use of the automated speech measures in arriving at their score decision. So what I think is that all of this cool software can be utilized by an examiner, by a rater, so that they can see the level of pronunciation according to the automated scoring. But then the human rater just takes that as a piece of information that can confirm what they think about this speaker's pronunciation. And the same for grammar and vocabulary and other measures. But then the human rater makes the executive decision at the end, taking all these into account. Okay, if you're interested in learning more from Duolingo, technical manual, it's readable. It's the most readable text that I came across looking into this. And there's a webinar link here too. This fella's interesting, and yeah, if you like to have complexity explained, this is a good place to go. And they present basically an argument for why the Duolingo works and why it can be trusted. If you want to try out the test, you can do so here. I find I was looking into the ETS, the TOEFL IBT spending a lot of time looking at journals, write-ups, looking at the evidence that they're providing that it works. And then I actually went and did a practice test, and the design was so bad, and there were so many obvious features that meant that it wasn't working, that it doesn't matter how much time, how many articles, or how much research they provide, which tells me it's working. There is just that face validity that, yeah, if it doesn't feel like it's working, then it's hard to believe that it is. But the Duolingo is well designed, intuitive, and as you're doing the tests, and you can do it in different languages, I think you'll find that you gain trust in its approach. Here are some more scholarly articles cited in the Duolingo test manual. And if you are interested in automated speaking assessment, I know some in the department are. Here, with a strong focus from ETS, they make the TOEFL IBT. They've got a book series. Basically, they publish sort of their research, and the latest one, volume 3, is on automated speaking assessment, and it's 10 chapters on this topic, and it was just released 2 years ago, so it's absolutely up to date. Well, it's up to date. And yeah, there's some interesting stuff in there. I didn't present on writing evaluation, but basically the evaluating speech is going to be based on the systems that have been devised for evaluating writing. So I started to look into that. Didn't get as far as with the speech. And that is the end of my presentation.
Thanks a million, Simon. Great work. Very interesting. I'm just reading the comments. You're off full screen. You can read the comments now. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. If there's any questions, I know everyone here is probably keen to get off, but I'm happy to stick around. So yeah, either questions. Thanks for the comments, Linda and Joe. And yeah, it's an area that is new for me, and I've found it every stone I lifted, I found there was not a whole new world, but there's a lot of very interesting things happening in this area, and the applications of the technology that's being used by Duolingo, it's so wide-reaching that you see something like Duolingo, and that is really just the tip of the iceberg. Okay, well, if there aren't any questions, then I'll finish there. Thanks for organising today, Dara.
All your work and the work of everybody else. Thanks everybody for all their presentations. Simon, fantastic job. Thanks everybody for coming as well, should I add while I have the camera. I'd just say just the one thing on the topic. I don't know if you're aware of, even with WeChat, you know, just the instant translation tool that we have as well. You know, you literally hold down the button, speak into it, and it translates into Chinese. You can also just rub your finger that way and it turns into Chinese text, which you can correct. Phenomenal stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, moving to China in 2021 is a lot easier than I imagine moving to China in 1999.
Yeah. Yeah, so simultaneous translation.
I mean, I got my haircut yesterday, and I could literally just go in and say, hello, I would like my haircut like this, and then show a photograph. In the year I can't remember, but around the year 2000, I went to the Czech Republic, and I had long hair, and I said, can I get my haircut? And he shaved that much off my head before I went. Now, when I said like that, I meant a little off.
Yeah.
So,
not a little left.
Yeah, not that little left, a little off. Anyway, so I yes.
So it's, yeah. Well, it sounds like another barrier to improving one's Chinese. Just
this
the
is
tools
true.
you have available.
This is true.
So they
And
can help language learning, but they also make immersion harder. You have to go into the countrysides and leave your smartphone at home.
and there's a lot of truth in that.
And on that note.
Yeah. Okay, Simon. Like I said, thanks a million. Fantastic work.
Okay. Cheers then. Bye-bye.
I'll chat to you again soon. Bye.
Yeah. Cheers.